Hello, everyone!
And welcome to the Gamer Agenda Podcast, where our agenda is to be gay
and play games. This is episode 0 of our brand new podcast, where we'd like to give ourselves a little introduction on who we are and what we hope to accomplish moving forward. I'm Dreadianz, a gay-ass artist that loves her monkeys.
And I'm Spider, a total gamer from New York City.
Care to tell us a little bit about what this podcast is and what we're going to do with it, Spider?
Yes. So, number one, thank you so much, everyone who's listening to this and giving us a chance. This is a big deal for me and Dreadianz doing a podcast together. So, let me tell you what the podcast is about. The podcast covers 2 big topics. It covers video games. We're going to talk a lot about video games. You know, me and Dreadianz, we especially love Nintendo games. So, probably more on that side. But, you know, video games. And then we'll be covering queer topics. Topics that involve the LGBTQ community. Either about history, about what's going on now in today's day and age in the United States. And things like that. So, what do you call it? That's our main thing that we're talking about. So,
that's our hook.
That's our hook. We're gonna talk about those games. We're gonna talk about those queer topics. And hey, sometimes it may be combined. Maybe we'll talk about queer people in games. You know? So,
yeah, or how being a gamer affects you as a queer person.
Exactly. So we're gonna be covering those things a lot when we do our podcast. So please, I really hope y'all subscribe to us, whether it be on iTunes, Spotify. We're gonna post our podcast everywhere. iTunes, Spotify. It's gonna be up on YouTube if you like listening to stuff on YouTube. It's going to be everywhere where you get your podcast. So please consider subscribing, let a friend know, and hey, you know what? If you're a gamer or you're a gamer, if you are, you know, please share our podcast, please. We really want to get the word out there to other queer people, to other gamers. We really want, you know, everyone to get a chance to hear what we got to say, to hear what our podcast is all about. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Dreadianz?
Oh yeah, and we definitely have plans to get guests on the feature in the future. You know, other queer people who will share their opinions and personal experiences, both on the queer side and in regards to gaming. You know, full disclaimer, we're not like trained professionals. This is definitely just like a project from the heart, a passion project. You know, it's just something that we came up with one day. And, you know, for me personally, I see it as a way to educate myself as well as educate others because, you know, I'm not going to act all high and mighty and say I know everything there is about being queer, about queer history, but I think there's, you know, this troubling trend of people our age. You know, we're not that old, we're kind of young, but you know, Gen Z people, Gen Z queers especially, you know, they don't know a lot about their own history, and it leads to a lot of like prejudice and, you know, bigotry, not just you know, from each other, but, you know, you have a lot of these terrible laws going on in the U.S. Another disclaimer, we're U.S. centric. We might talk about like issues around the world, but we are both Americans, so This is probably going to be mostly like American and like English speaking focused topics, but you never know, we might have some foreign guests. I definitely have some queer friends from other countries who might be willing to offer their opinions and all. But anyways, when I was in school, my teachers always told me that I was good at, like, condensing material and explaining things. Like, I was good at, like, teaching people. So I think this would be a great opportunity to educate myself and, like, study about, like, queer history and, you know, just give a chance to teach it to other people while also talking about video games because, you know, who doesn't like video games? It's also something that's very popular with people our age. So, you know, I think it's a good way to tie together 2 things that we're really passionate about. We're gay gamers, so we're going to talk about gay stuff, and we're going to talk about game stuff.
Exactly. And, you know, we got the idea for this podcast, kind of Dreadianz was kind of talking a bit about that, but we got an idea for this podcast because look at what's going on nowadays. We got attacks on drag queens with the Drag Queen Story Hour. We got all these bills coming out against transgender adults and children. You know, we got lots of serious stuff happening in our country. We got people trying to outlaw sodomy and all this stuff. It's like, it's insane. We got lots of stuff happening in our country. And we got rhetoric. We got people calling gay people groomers. You know, we got lots of serious topics that I really feel at times, look, you can't change everyone. But sometimes people really just don't know. Like, I was talking to one of my friends. They're like, "Oh my God, all this is happening." They had no clue because they're not in the space of queer people, so they don't know. And I really think that if you just educate some people enough, they will understand and be like, "Oh wow, so that's happening. That's not okay. Like, that's not good at all. No one should be treated that way." And so we really want to talk about those things, and then talk about how a lot of rhetoric that goes on nowadays, it's the same rhetoric that happened in the past. We have a history, a whole entire
They say history repeats itself.
And it repeats itself, because it really does. The same rhetoric gets used over and over again, and it's able to get through because people don't know better, and they don't care to research it, you know? So we really want to hit home on those topics, because, you know, it matters a lot to me. Let me tell you something. As a gay person in 2023, hold on. Me and Dreadianz have this idea for a while for this podcast, but like,
yeah.
we've experienced so much like homophobia, we see it in transphobia, we see all sorts of like queer phobia going on, and it's kind of disheartening. You know, I turn on my computer, and then I see what's going on. I turn on my phone, I see what's going on in the world, and it's just it breaks my heart. I'm like, people really misunderstand us.
Yeah. And I think the video games part of the podcast is sort of in relation to that, because a lot of queer history and queer news is pretty depressing. You know, there's been a lot of strife against queer people, but that's not to say there isn't queer joy too. There's, you know, there's a lot of good and bad, but it's an important kind of bad. Like, you know, there's a trend that, you know, oh, this, you know, kids can't learn this. This is too serious. It's like, well, when are they gonna learn then? Like, you know, a lot of people are prone to repeating the mistakes of the past because they just don't know what happened, like Spider was saying. So we hope to have this serve as both as like an educational feature, but also we've got the game parts as sort of a palate cleanser because we don't want to bum the audience out. But at the same time, it's important to know that these things happened. So we're genuinely just offering the raw facts and our opinions on it, and then sort of tying it in with something that's more fun, like a hobby, you know, as sort of a you know, we learned this, now how does it relate to this? Or, you know, sometimes we'll just have an episode that's just about gaming, and then, you know, it's like, yo, here, you had your history lesson, you passed the quiz, here's your lollipop, we get to talk about Super Mario.
Exactly. You see, she covered it perfectly. That's kind of what it is. Like, we want those queer topics that may be a little bit hard to hear, but, you know, are very important discussions to have. And then we're going to tie it in with video games. Like, we're going to have fun. We're going to talk about games. Oh, what's going on with Mario Kart? What's going on with Mario Party? I want DLC. What's going on, Nintendo? You know, so both things are going to happen. So, you know, and oh, look, you as the listener, you can choose to listen to whichever, you know, you want, whatever topic you want. But we hope you really listen to it all, because all of it is important. Because, you know, that's how it is being queer. There's the joy, like what Dreadianz said. There's the joy, and then there's the, you know, the hard times. But you know what? The bad times, we get through the bad times by talking about it. Because talking about it is therapeutic. Sometimes just talking about those things, like, our brain can just ease, because it's like we're letting out all the emotions and the feelings. So it's important conversations to have, and that's kind of how we had the idea for this. And also, one more thing. Like Dreadianz also mentioned earlier, we do want to have queer guests on. Look, we want to have guests of all kinds on, but one thing that I also thought about when we came up with this podcast is I really want to showcase queer talent. LGBTQ creators, you know, especially in the gaming world, you know. We don't realize sometimes the gaming world can be a bit homophobic. At times, yeah, it really is. Like, growing up, you hear that, like, when you play a game with people, they hear your voice and you sound obviously gay, they call you slurs and things like that. The gaming world can be a bit much. And so, like, we really want to have some queer gamers on to talk about, you know, their experiences in that, but also just talk about fun stuff and just have them showcase maybe their stream, their YouTube, their whatever the case is. But, you know, we really want to give a platform to those people. So that's kind of where we're coming from, where we thought of this podcast.
I think that sums it up about pretty well. So now that we've gone over the basic idea of what we have in mind for this podcast, I think now we should talk a little bit about like who we are and how we met, because there's a little bit of backstory that is important to the formation of this podcast in the sort of like ideals and topics we wish to talk about going forward.
So our agenda today is to introduce ourselves. We are introducing ourselves to the world. That's the agenda today. So, but you know, we really want to talk a bit about like how we met, right? We want to talk about how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
Why don't we start from the beginning? So, me and Dreadianz. By the way, Dreadianz, at any point, if I'm saying something, interrupt, please.
Oh yeah.
we first met back in 2008. I was okay. How old were you, Dreadianz?
I was like 10 years old. I was a fucking fetus.
You were 10. I was like, this was in 2008. So I didn't turn 12 just yet. I was 11. You were 10.
Yeah, I was like 10. I was like 10 going on 11, but I'm pretty sure I was 10 when we met, because I'm a December baby. Any December babies out there, subscribe, give us a like.
December babies. Or October babies.
Yeah, December babies, October babies, hit us up. Like, yes. Share, follow.
Like, share, follow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was 10. I was 10 years old on YouTube, probably when I really shouldn't be, but you know, this is back when there were still actual kids websites on the internet, like your Neopets and Club Penguin and Yahoo Kids and shit like that. You don't got that anymore. That's
oh no.
I could complain about the modern state of the internet. That could be its own podcast topic. But yeah, we were both.
Very well may be a podcast.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, but we were super young, and we met through YouTube, through a YouTube community that focused on Earthbound, like Earthbound, yes. Earthbound Mother games.
Yes, and because we've heard about Earthbound and Mother through Smash Brothers. Right?
Yeah, Smash Brothers Brawl, yeah, because that was the most recent Smash Brothers game at the time. And 2008, around, yeah, it would have been like 2008, 2009 that we met, because I got my Wii as a graduation present from graduating the 5th grade. So I got a Wii, and I got Brawl. That was my first Wii game, and that was around 2008. Yeah. So Staryu and I, or Spider and I, we were both really into Brawl, and we were really into other games because of Brawl. And I think that's sort of the beautiful thing about Smash Bros. Like, it introduces you to other series. I got really big into, like, the Ice Climbers and Earthbound and Pikmin. Mm-hmm. All those I was introduced to through Brawl. But yeah, Spider and I don't exactly remember how we started talking, but we like the same things. We're in the same communities, and it's kind of like wild. I met a lot of like my closest friends in that community, like people I'm still friends with today. So, you know, shout out to PSI Paula 4. You know, yes. I don't know if you're still active on the internet, but your videos are the reason why I have all my best friends with me now. But yeah, I don't exactly remember how we started talking, but we exchanged friend codes, or Wii friend codes, and we'd play a bunch of Smash Bros. Online.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure I was not good at it at all, because I was 10 years old. And what were you saying the other day, Spider, that I always like to taunt?
Oh yeah, so when we would play Smash Brothers, this girl, she would just taunt. She liked to crouch several times, because that's how you do. It's like a taunt party. So back in Smash Brothers Brawl, there was these taunt parties. So you can do them on anyone you like. Play with just anyone, like random strangers, and they will understand to crouch a bunch of times and then do taunts and stuff. So that's one big thing that she would do. Like,
yeah,
she would just
real ones remember taunt parties on Smash Brothers. Like, I think
the
again,
OGs, no.
Yeah, OGs know. I think because I was so young, that was really, like, my first instance of, like, genuine, pure human interaction. Because a lot of people, when they talk about, like, playing games online with people, like, especially back around the, like, late 2000s, they would just talk about, like, Call of Duty lobbies and, like, people getting mad salty, saying all this racist shit. Mine was just playing Smash Brothers and just be like, crunch, 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 taunt, 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 taunt. And I think I'd always play as Kirby or whatever, so I'd just be like,
yeah, you do Kirby and you do Olimar.
Yeah, man, Olimar had, like, the best taunts because, like, he never said anything, so he'd just be vibing.
Yeah, and man, like, I have such a history for Smash Bros. Because I grew up playing the first game on the 64, then Melee, then Brawl. I was so big into Smash Bros. And it's so crazy how it introduced me to so many different series like Earthbound and things like that. So that's kind of how we met, and then we would play Smash Bros. Together, and then we kind of fell off. Like,
yeah,
we kind of fell off, and actually, I think I know the reason why. It's because my YouTube account got suspended.
Oh, jeez. Damn. Naughty boy.
Naughty boy. Give me a spanking. No, don't give me a spanking. No, I'll tell you what happened. Because I can say this because it doesn't matter. This was like over 10 years ago. What, YouTube's not going to re-find me, I hope. I
don't know.
Who knows? But I got suspended because I uploaded a video of Mr. Rogers.
Oh no, you got the like the copyright.
Let me tell you. Hold on, let me tell you. It was not a beautiful day in the neighborhood. It was not. I got, in the words of one of my best friends, I got by not. My account
You got clapped.
I got clapped. I got destroyed. That account disappeared completely.
Okay, yeah, quick aside. Do you remember on YouTube when people would, like, upload, like, anime and cartoon, like, entire episodes, but it'd be split into, like, 3 parts because back in the day you could only upload up to, like, 10 minutes or whatever.
Yes.
So it'd be like,
I remember.
It'd be like Naruto, episode 120, 1 out of 3. Like, that's how people, like, this is way before, like, streaming or even Netflix or whatever. So that's how people would, like, watch stuff online if they were, like, too young or too stupid to know how to pirate stuff.
Yeah, that's how everyone did it. So... wow, like, yeah, so my account got suspended, and we didn't talk for, like, several years.
Yeah, it wasn't until, like, God, I was in, like, high school when we started talking again, like, somewhere around my sophomore year, so I think I would have been, like, 14, 15, so yeah, from, like, 10, so yeah, about, like, almost, like, 5 years we lost contact, and it wasn't until it was so weird. It was kind of just like a fated meeting because God, thinking about I don't even know how I ended up on this next place. We met again on this place called the Mario Party Legacy Forum.
Yes.
It was a subset of Mario Party Legacy, which is a website that talks about like it talks about games, mostly Mario games and Mario Party games. And it was around a time it was before Mario Party 9 released. So it was like the period between Mario Party 8 and DS and Mario Party 9 where we just didn't have a Mario Party for a while. And I remember when I was a kid, I loved the fuck out of Mario Party 8 and Mario Party DS. I know Mario Party 8's kind of like a black sheep now. Though, I don't know, compared to, like, the more modern Mario Parties, I think more people have lightened up to Mario Party 8, but I know back in the day, back around when I joined the site, people hated Mario Party 8. It's like, oh, the motion controls are so buggy, or, like, the graphics are ugly, or stuff like that. Like, people hated it, especially the goddamn monkey game, Flip the Chimp. Like, everyone always... oh, God. Everyone, like, if you so much as said, oh, I thought Mario Party 8 was okay, people are like, oh, what about Flip the Chimp, though? Flip the Chimp. Anyways, yeah, I don't remember how I ended up on Mario Party Legacy, but I was there, and I was on the forum, and I had this sort of reputation as, like, the Toadette fan, and I'll go more into that later, because that's a story on its own. But I was the Toadette fan. Everyone knew me as Toadette. I used to go by Toadette before I went as Dreadianz.
Yes.
And there was a podcast on Mario Party Legacy, funny that,
Yes.
called The Lost Levels, which was pretty similar to this podcast, where it talked about video games and like personal experiences. And I think I think I offered to be a guest on one of the episodes. What episode was it? Do you even remember what episode it was that I guest starred on?
It was episode 33. It was Mario Kart Double Dash.
Mario Kart, yeah, and I used that as like the opportunity to be like, oh yes, I can talk about Toadette, yes, because I was like, again, I was like 15, I was a simp, like this little pink woman, she changed my whole life. Again, I'll go more into that later. But yeah, I joined as a guest, and
then after you guest starred, I messaged you because I thought you were so good on the episode. You like were like what you said. You explained things perfectly. You would get into it. You were funny. So like I remember I messaged you after the episode, and I was like, hey, do you want to like be on our podcast? Because the podcast consisted of two of my friends, Super Zambizi and Dark Boo. So like it was just us three. Oh, and Timmy. So
shout out to Timmy.
3 friends. Shout out to Timmy. So my 3 friends and me, and then I was like, hey, do you want to like be on our podcast? Because like you were so good and you were funny, and there was just so many reasons to have her on. And like she was like, well, like it was you said at first because we would record on the weekdays. You're like, well, I don't know if I could do the weekdays, but maybe the weekend. And then we were like, yeah,
because I was still in school, and like I don't know, I think something about the idea of like coming home from a long day at school and then like, oh, I have to record this like 2-hour podcast, and that didn't like sit well with me. But I was like, this sounds really fun though, because my mom did a lot of podcasts, and it sounded like something that like felt so like cool and mature, and I was like, oh, I could be on a podcast talking about video games, yeah. So I agreed, and I ended up being a Lost Levels member for about like at least like 70 episodes. Like I did have to kind of like drop off once I went into college, because again, I was around like a sophomore or junior when I joined, so I was getting close to graduating, and I was worried that like I wouldn't be able to give it my all on the podcast because I would be like so swamped with college work. And I ended up being right, because there's a lot of stuff happening in college, but my time during the Lost Levels, at least like a good 2 years I was on there, it was amazing. And I think, one day, I'm getting a little off track here, one day, I don't even remember when it happened, but one day I think we were just bringing up like our pasts, and the old YouTube accounts like came into conversation, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm such and such on YouTube, and Spider was like, wait, do you remember this username, his old username, which I'm not going to repeat because I don't think he likes talking about his old username.
I know, it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you have a lot of like cringe usernames that you regret. But yeah, and I was like, wait, that was you? And it's just the funniest goddamn coincidence. Just this guy I used to play Smash Brothers with, that I met on YouTube like 5 years ago, just so happens to be this guy I'm talking to on the podcast. Yeah. And even further, more of a coincidence, we both happen to live in the same area. We both live in New York City. So this guy I was talking to, this guy I was friends with like ages ago, it was just some guy that was like an hour away from me. So even after I dropped off of the Lost Levels, and eventually the Lost Levels came to a close because I think just, everyone was getting busy. Yeah, everyone was getting busy. How many episodes were there? Like 200?
250.
250. That's a lot of episodes for any podcast. I think, with a subject like video games, you could just have a podcast that goes on indefinitely, but, everyone had their life outside the podcast, so, it had to come to an end eventually. But Spider and Boo, one of our other stars on the podcast, we all lived in New York, so we were just like, we could just meet up in the city and hang out. And Super Zambezi, he lived across the country, but he developed a career in gaming journalism. So he'd come over to New York for stuff like PAX and whatever, because there's a lot of like video game events. So it was like unreal, like being able to meet all these people I was talking to for like years. And even now, Spider and I still hang out. I go over to his house. Every month we meet up together for the Pokemon Go Community Day. We just did it. Today, the day of recording, it is January 22nd, 2023.
Yes.
So yesterday would have been the Larvitar Community Day Classic. We just did that and met up together yesterday. And yeah, so that kind of leads into how we got the idea for this new podcast that you're listening to right now. It was an idea that Spider brought up because we are within, train ride distance from each other. We're still in touch even after all these years. We like video games and we're both gay. So
both gay.
Yeah, that was another coincidence too, because I don't know about him, but I definitely was not out by the time we met, because when I was 10, I didn't know what the fuck I was. I was just a kid. I didn't really think about like boyfriends or girlfriends or anything. But then like around the time of the Lost Levels podcast, it's like, yeah, I'm gay.
I remember that. But I just want to quickly say one thing about us meeting again. I want to mention something about that. So we were on the podcast together, and like when she posted a YouTube video of her YouTube, and I'm like, wait, hold on one second. That I remember that so vividly, your name, and I remember messaging you like, do you remember this name? And you're like, oh my god, I do remember that. It was so crazy. It was the craziest coincidence. Let me tell you something. Coincidences, I feel like we were destined to meet again. I don't believe in just coincidences like that, because like it was like almost destiny that we met again, and like we both like the same games, we're both gay, like it was just like, it was so crazy.
Too good to be true.
Too good to be true. And let me tell you, I was friends with so many people on YouTube, like we mentioned earlier, PSI Paula 4, she was one of my close friends back then in 2008, so many different people, and like I don't talk to them. I talk to Dreadianz. It's crazy how we met again. And it's so beautiful. And that we go play Pokemon Go, and that we talk about, being gay. We talk about Pokemon Go. We talk about Nintendo games. Like, there's just so much that we relate on and we talk about. And like you were mentioning, you did actually come out on the podcast, I think. You came out in one episode, like, you said you like girls. I forgot which episode it was, but you talked about it. And, like, it was just so crazy because, like, while you were open to talk about it, like I was not ready at all to talk about it. Like some people may say like it's obvious, and that could be a whole nother episode about people who think calling out people out who may be obviously gay. A lot of people who heard me speak thought I was so obviously gay, like, oh, this is obvious, just say it, like what's going on. But I wasn't ready to say it. And when we talk a little bit more about our identities and stuff like that, we'll we'll talk about that more. But that was such a crazy thing that we met again like that. Like, it's crazy. It's so crazy. And it's like, some things in life I really feel like are destiny. So we really want to do a podcast because we did a podcast for several years. I was on it from 2012 to 2017. Dreadianz was on it from 2000. She joined mid-2012. And you actually left in 2015. So you were on it for 3 years.
That was around, 2015 would have been around the time I started college, because that's when I graduated high school.
Yeah, so you joined around 2015, and like, we just did podcasts. So we're kind of podcast veterans. We're kind of like OGs that are out of the game for a while, but we've done podcasts for like long time. Like, we talked about all sorts of things. Remember when we talked about Nintendo Switch and we called it, what was it back then? The X?
The NX?
NX?
Yeah.
We talked about that. We talked about, there's so much episodes of us talking about Wii U games, because our whole podcast was basically around during the Wii U days.
Yeah, that was the Wii U 3DS era. That pretty much, yeah.
That was our era. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we met. And why don't, this is kind of a segue. Why don't we talk a little bit more about ourselves individually, right?
Yeah, a little bit about our identities. I'll start.
You go first, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I thought it was kind of, it's ironic in a sad way that Spider mentioned that, like, even though people are like, oh, you're so obviously gay, why don't you admit it? I'm kind of the opposite. I've never really been, like, personally attacked for my identity. You know, my parents were very accepting, and I've never been, like, assaulted or whatever, beaten up or whatever, but I do remember in school when I said, oh yeah, I'm gay, I have a girlfriend, people were like, really? Like, they didn't believe me. It's like, do I not look gay enough to you? Like, it kind of made me think of, like, the sort of, like, you have, like, the generic gay guy and the generic lesbian in mind, the stereotypes and all, and I don't know, I guess I didn't look lesbian enough, or, like, just people didn't believe that I had game, because I was kind of a loser. But anyways, yeah, so part of the reason I agreed to do this new podcast is, one, I really miss doing podcasting, and I thought it was a fun idea, but two, the COVID pandemic, you know, I've been talking about school a lot. The COVID pandemic just so happened to begin right when I graduated college, so great, yeah, my first steps into the adult world, and we got this fucking viral pandemic going on. So I ended up, like, you know, just being in my room a lot, doing nothing, but also not exactly doing nothing, because I had a lot of time to self-reflect, and I already knew that I was gay, but during the pandemic, I thought a lot about my gender identity too. So after a bit of, like, self-reflection, I became pretty confident in saying that I am a genderqueer lesbian. And I like to say genderqueer over trans or non-binary or gender fluid, because I see myself as, like, a very masculine woman. Like, I still only prefer to be called she, her, but, you know, there are male features that I'd like on my body, like facial hair and the like. You know, I don't mind when people call me, like, sir or dude or guy, but, you know, I'm still a woman. I still like to be called she. And, you know, I'm kind of like a guy, but in a girl way, and it's kind of confusing, but that's why I like to say genderqueer, because, you know, queer, most of the time these days, you know, you associate with being gay, like, you know, queer person, but queer is also, like, a word for something weird, like, you know, that's queer, and I kind of like identifying as the weird, queer as in weird. You know, some people think that queer is a slur, and, you know, I respect their decision to not want to use the word, but I fully embrace being called queer, because I feel like it's the easiest way to describe myself, because sometimes even I'm not 100% sure what I am, and that's okay. But for the lesbian part, that's a lot easier to explain, and that ties back into video games. I said before, my parents were really open-minded, so they didn't care that I was gay. In fact, I remember my mom saying, my mom would say that she always had a feeling, because I never really expressed, like, strong interest in dating boys when I was younger. There are a couple of boys that I had crushes on, but I would define crush more in the sense of, like, you know, you're a little kid, and there's someone of the opposite sex that you really like. So, you know, based on, like, what TV and movies taught you, you think, oh, that must mean I have a crush on them. Nope, it just means, you know, this guy is my friend, I really like him, because, again, this could be a whole other subject that we could talk about in another episode, but, like, when you're a girl, or if you're a guy, you know, you're taught that if you really like someone of the opposite sex, you know, clearly that means you're in love with them. Like, there's a lot of stigma against, you know, guys and girls being friends. But anyways, yeah, video games. My parents, they would play a lot of video games. When I got into playing video games, I became really attached to a lot of female characters. You know, Princess Peach, the girl ice climber, the female Pokemon trainers. I always loved playing as a girl, and befriending or using other girl characters. And at a certain point, I began to think that maybe I like playing as the girl characters for reasons other than I'm a girl. And so the one character, I think, there's this meme on Twitter right now, which I hope is not outdated by the time this podcast gets uploaded. It's the hear me out meme, where, like, someone posts, like, a picture of, like, a character from something that maybe is not, like, traditionally sexy or whatever, but it's, like, they're, like, you know, their problematic crush or whatever. It's like, now hear me out! I would say that my hear me out character is Toadette. The little pink mushroom bitch from Mario. I don't even know why she was so appealing to me, but I just fell in love with her. I had to own every single piece of merch, every single game that had her in it. I still have I am, like, facing it right now in my bedroom. I'm in my bedroom recording this, and I've got my wall of Toadette merchandise. I still have all of it. I still love her, but, you know, without going into too much detail, I think having that much of an obsession over something when you're a teen going to puberty, like, really changes you. Something about being so in love with Toadette, clicked and it made something click in my head that was like, damn, I really love girls. So I am legit serious when I say I think Toadette helped me realize I was gay. And now, you know, I'm in a gay relationship. My partner is non-binary, but at the time we hooked up, they were still going by she. I still love Toadette. I still always like playing as a girl character. When I play Pokemon, as much as I can, I use teams of all girl Pokemon, like Girl Starter, all the Pokemon I catch are girls. But, you know, I still also have that strong masculine side, too. I'll use all-girl Pokemon, but it'll be, like, shit like Incineroar or Machamp or Tyrantrum. Like, I'll use, like, the buffest, scariest-looking motherfuckers, and they got that little red female sign next to them, because I love my big buff girls. And I like big buff guys, too. Like, if I can't play as Toadette, I'll usually be, like, Bowser or Wario or Donkey Kong. I'll be like some like gruff big dude. And I think you know, my choices in video game characters pretty much sum up my identity well.
All right. Well, for me, for my gender identity, I'm a cis man, right? So he, him, all day, every day. That's me. My gender identity was never really something that was a hard thing a part of my life, because I know for people who are non-binary or trans, there's like kind of like a discovery, like this is who you are. Like for me, that I never really went through that. So for gender identity, it was I never really had issues or never had problems growing up with that, because that's not personally my experience. But for sexuality, oh boy, woo, woo, let me tell you, I went through some things. Oh my gosh. So for me, being a gay man, like, this is how I always say it. Like, I'm a gay man. I like men. Men.
Dudes!
I can't help it.
Guys!
I can't help it. They're just so cute. What am I supposed to do? I've never been attracted to the opposite sex. I've never been attracted to women. And so for me, I've known I was different growing up. Like, I kind of knew a bit that I was different, but the unfortunate difference between me and Dreadianz is that I don't have a family that's very accepting of gay people or being gay. And I remember so vividly the first time I've ever even seen something gay. I was in Forest Hills. So if y'all know New York City, you know what Forest Hills is, okay? I was in Forest Hills, and I remember I was walking by this sign. And not a sign. You remember those telephone booths? You remember those, like, little telephone things, like, you get a call? Those don't exist no more, because everyone has cell phones.
Yeah.
But I remember I walked by this telephone booth. I was, like, maybe 7 or 8 or something like that. And I remember I'll never forget it. This is exactly what it was. It was 2 guys, a black man and a white man was hugging the guy from behind. And it looked like a sweet thing. It didn't look like it was, like, sexual. It didn't look dirty. It just, like, it was like, loving. Like, he was hugging him from behind. And then there was something about, something about being gay or something on it. And I remember my family reacted so negatively to this. I remember thinking as a kid, like, but I don't get it. What's wrong? And they're like, oh, hell no. They were like, this is wrong. This shouldn't be in public. We need to call someone about this. This sign shouldn't be here. This is propaganda. This is the gay agenda. That's kind of why our podcast is what it is. The gamer agenda. right? You know, that was a big thing, especially back then, the gay agenda. They said, like, oh, the gay agenda is gay people are gonna make other people gay, or they're gonna make other people trans. And that was a big thing back then, the gay agenda.
Honey, I wish it worked like that. Then I would stop hearing all these annoying people.
You know, I wish it worked like that too, but the reality is it doesn't. And also, the reality is that we don't want to convert every single person in the world. That's complete baloney. You know, but let me back to my story. You know, like that, I heard that, so I knew my parents had a negative view on this, which I didn't understand. I was like, I don't get it. I don't see anything wrong. And that's how you know hate is taught, because like I didn't think anything was wrong with it. Why would I look at two men hugging or two women hugging and think something's wrong? It just looked like love. It was like loving, right? So I didn't think anything wrong with it. And for me, I didn't really know that I was gay, but I would always do things that were so obviously... Let me tell you something. Let me tell you a funny story. A little fruity, but let me tell you this funny story. This is so ironic. So in Sunday school... I remember one time... let me tell you something. All my Sunday school teachers, besides one in like sixth grade, all my Sunday school teachers were always so sweet, so loving, so nice. They were very nice to the kids. It was great. Like I always had a great time in Sunday school. No bad stories there. But there was this one time, I remember this teacher, I kind of had a crush on a teacher. This teacher, I remember this is so ironic. This is in church, y'all. He was going to get some Bibles from a lower cabinet, and he was, like, bent over.
Oh, baby's first buns.
Like, he had these, like, just this big butt. I remember just staring at him. Like, I was the first one in class, the first kid. There was no one around besides this guy getting the Bibles, you know, getting ready for Sunday school. So he was just the only one there, and it was just me, and I just remember looking, and I think I stared at him for almost a minute, because he was trying to get all these Bibles, and I was just staring at him, like... I don't know why I wanted to look at it. Now as an adult, I know that, okay, clearly I was looking at him because I thought he was attractive. But as a kid, I didn't really know. Like, I was just looking. I'm like, but there it is.
And this is the sort of shit where, like, more conservative or bigoted people would be like, oh my god, you're grooming our kids. They're thinking about sex when they're kids. And it's like, I mean... You know, like, everyone grows up at some point, you know, discovering your sexuality and what, like, turns you on or, like, you know, fires those cylinders in your brain. Whether you're gay or straight or bi or whatever, that's kind of a normal part of growing up. Like, we were all kids. Like, every kid thinks about something sexual. Every kid jacks off at some point. You have to start at some point. And I don't think it should be, like, considered, like, pedophilic or whatever to mention that, because that's just the facts. Like, you know, it's not something... Just because it's called, like, you know, adult subjects, a kid thinking, like, their teacher is attractive is not the same as, like, a teacher showing their kid, like, porn or something like that. It's not even close. Yeah. That's just a normal part of growing up.
Big difference. And, you know... it's basically a sexual awakening. Like, everyone has that point where, whether it be a teenager or whatever, but, like, I didn't even really know it was it was like this big thing. I just remember looking at it and just, I don't know why, I just remember just smiling. I liked looking at it. And I remember he turned around and he's like, oh, Michael, I didn't see you there, I'm sorry. And he's like, I'm like, oh, it's okay. Hi, mister, whatever his last name was. Hi, mister. And then we were just talking. It was fine. Like, he didn't think anything of it, but I certainly did.
Yeah, but, it's very, you know, it's those little moments that are, like, super casual. You don't even think about it. But then, like, you look back in your life and you're like, oh, that explains everything.
But inherently, though, it was innocent. It was natural. That's what people don't get sometimes. That being gay, just like being straight, it's natural to who we are. Like, me looking at him, I didn't just decide I'm going to look at him. It was naturally innate in me to see someone who I thought was attractive and just be like, I want to look, right? I didn't have more thoughts than that, but I just knew I wanted to look. And as I got older, I remember... Do you want to say something?
I was just going to say something real quick. Your story about the teacher reminded me about how when I was in, like, high school...
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
There were a lot of teachers that I liked, that I, like, would... In my high school was very casual about the teacher-student relations. Like, we'd call our teachers by their first name. There was no, like, Mr. or Mrs. whatever. You know, if the teacher's name was John... Like, if the teacher's name was John Appleseed, it wasn't Mr. Appleseed. It was John.
Yeah.
So you'd have this very casual relationship with your teacher, and they kind of, it felt, and a lot of the teachers were on the younger side too, like 20s or 30s. So it felt more like just having like a friend than a teacher, or like kind of like a mentorly friend. So it was very normal for you to like hang out with the teacher during lunch. I remember a couple times during field trips, I'd go out and have lunch with the teachers, because I was like a good student, so everyone knew me, everyone liked hanging out with me. But I definitely remember there were a lot of teachers I liked, but the teachers I had the closest relationships to were all women. They were all women, and that's not just because, women teachers are more common, because there are a lot of male teachers at my school too. I'm pretty sure I had a gay male teacher too. But, yeah, I was really close to a lot of these female teachers, and I looked up to them, and I always felt so safe around them. They were doing what a teacher should do. They would protect their kids, they would be good role models to their kids, but I kind of think about, having all these, like, mentorly female teachers I looked up to, and now I'm a gay-ass bitch with a mommy fetish. That had to like play into something, right? It's not just me, right?
I mean, well, hey, I mean, look, I was staring at this teacher in church, and so clearly, look, I now have a thing for butts, and then he was also blonde haired, blue eyed, so now I love me a cute blonde boy. Toadette knows. I mean, excuse me, Dreadianz knows. I'd be looking at them when we were playing Pokemon Go. I'm always like, hey, Dread. Look at that. Look at that guy. You're like, what? And then you're like, okay.
He's always pointing out cute dudes to me. I don't even notice, because my ass is so engrossed in the game. I'm like, what? I missed it.
Oh, man. But
even when he points out girls to me, I'm like, I didn't, huh?
Okay, we gotta quickly talk about this. I remember one time, there was this beautiful woman, and she was, like, in a dress and everything. She just had this beautiful porcelain skin. I was just like, oh my god, she's so beautiful. And I was like, hey, Dredd, do you see her? You're like, huh? What? I was like, how did I notice a girl and you didn't?
I don't know. I'd be like, I'm in my head. I'm, like, in my own little world most of the time. So I don't do a lot of peeking. You gotta, like, if you want to show me, like, a cute girl, whatever, you gotta, like, hold a picture up into my face, because I will not be paying attention.
Yeah. But to finish off that story, so, okay, so that happened, so that was one thing that happened, but I remember as I got older, like a teenager, one big thing for me was when I would ever think about guys, I would always not think about it in a gay way. That's what I would tell myself. I'd be like, no, me thinking about attractive guys, like, no, that's not gay. That's just like dudes being dudes, like bros being bros. And I'm like, as I got older, I'm like, oh my god, no, that was actually really, really gay. That was like, are you kidding me? Who's thinking about attractive guys and thinking about their bodies and things like that? That's not a bros being bros thing. Get out of here. And I remember when I was like 17, this was a big deal for me. I remember I looked in the mirror and I was like, I gotta start being real with myself. Like, I keep thinking about guys. I'm thinking about, thinking about guys, thinking about being with them, thinking about how attractive they are, thinking about how cute they are. Like I said, I can't help it, they're so cute, right? And I remember I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, just say it. And I said, I'm gay. And I said it several times, like, I'm gay.
I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay, I'm gay.
You know how Ellen DeGeneres said it back in her show? She's like, I'm gay. like that's how I kept saying it. And I remember the craziest thing was that I remember after like several times of saying it, it's like my brain finally caught on, like, oh,
you're gay.
You're gay. Thinking about guys sexually and emotionally, that's pretty damn gay.
That's pretty gay.
That's gay. Like, that's not straight. You're not straight thinking about being with guys and being in a relationship with them. You're gay. And
I know what you are.
It's like, that's what my brain was doing. And, like, I remember just being like, oh my god. Like, I was actually kind of scared. Like, I'm like, oh my god, I am. And it's so weird. It's like, when you really realize who you are, it's like, it's so strange because it's a scary feeling because it's like, oh no. Like, all the bad things that happen to gay people, that's going to happen to me. I'm gonna have to tell my family. I'm gonna have to tell my friends. And I remember I first started off by telling you guys, like, I told Dreadianz, I told our friend, our mutual friend Dark Boo. Like, I was telling them, and I remember one of the funny things Dreadianz said. She's like, "Yeah, I kind of figured."
I mean, yeah, it was pretty obvious, but sometimes it isn't. Like, sometimes, like, I've seen some pretty fruity straight guys before. You know, like, again,
Yeah.
you can't like let your disposition or your voice or how you act like dictate your sexuality. You know, there's definitely some harmful stereotypes out there. But I had a feeling.
Exactly, but every part of who they are is just who they are. You could be feminine and be gay. You could be masculine. You could be both, right? That's how I would consider myself. I'm obviously a cis man, but at times I could be feminine. At times I could be masculine. And that's fine for who I am. I remember we talked about, and we're gonna talk about this a bit later, but me and Dreadianz have future podcasts planned where we're gonna talk about things like that, and so we're really gonna get more into that in the future. Right, but that I just wanted to say that story for me being gay. So you talked about yourself and your identity, and I talked about myself. You know what? Why don't we just change the subject a little bit and talk about games?
Yeah, we talked about the gay part. Now let's talk about the game part.
The game part. So why don't you start us off? Like, let's talk about your gaming journey. Like, talk about what was some of the first games you've played. Talk about what games you like series you like, and then talk about like what games you're playing now.
Alright, so I mentioned earlier that my parents were pretty big gamers themselves. They especially my dad, they grew up with stuff like, like the Atari, the SNES. My dad was a big Sega guy. He had the Genesis and everything. Sega. Yeah, so when I was little, I would watch my parents play a lot of video games, and sometimes it was stuff that I shouldn't be watching, like Mortal Kombat.
Oh, damn.
Granted, to be fair, I mean, the graphics of the gore of like the OG Mortal Kombat games, they're more silly than anything. It's kind of hilarious to think that like back in the 90s, like, people were like clutching their pearls about this shit. They were like, "Oh my god! This is like the same as showing a child like live murder on TV," which, I mean, there's plenty of shows where people get like shot or stabbed to death, like noir flicks and horror and whatever. But anyways, yeah, having Sub-Zero pull out like a cartoony ass spine out of someone was like the worst thing possible. I think Mortal Kombat was like directly responsible for the ESRB system, if I remember correctly.
You're correct. Correct.
And there were versions where they like just got rid of the blood entirely. They made it like green blood, or they had like the robot and monster characters. They'd have like green blood or like oil blood. But anyways, yeah. I'd watch my parents play Mortal Kombat. My aunt is like about like a decade or so older than me. She was like a teenager when I was a little kid. So she'd play a lot of video games too. She was like a PlayStation kid, so I'd watch her like play Final Fantasy. So I think it's kind of funny that my parents were like Sega people and my aunt was a PlayStation person. I don't know if I had any Xbox gamers. Around the time I'd watch the games, like, Xbox was pretty new. It was like the new kid on the block. So I don't think I had any Xbox gamers in my family. I was the Nintendo guy. I ended up becoming the Nintendo guy. Even now, pretty much everything I play is Nintendo. And it has nothing to do with, like, console wars or dumb shit like that. I don't believe in that stuff. I'm just a creature of habit. I grew up playing Nintendo games, so I still play Nintendo games. I play the occasional PC game, too, but my computer runs like ass, so I prefer the comfort of just having, like, my DS or my Switch or whatever. But yeah, the first games I really remember playing, I remember playing Melee and Mario Party 4, I think, on my cousin's GameCube. That's probably the earliest games I remember playing. But the first system I owned was the DS. I got it for Christmas, and my first two games were Big Brain Academy and New Super Mario Brothers, the first one.
Wow.
And that pretty much just, like, that says it all. Like, I grew up playing Mario games. I played a lot of like the kind of colorful kitty games. Your Mario, your Kirby. Yeah, and my tastes haven't really changed that much. I like a lot of like really casual and colorful games like Mario. I really love Pokemon. I think I'd say Pokemon. Even though I kind of built up my legacy on Mario games, I honestly have to say I think Pokemon's probably my favorite franchise now because it's just like so consistently satisfying. And my autistic little brain loves to remember all the, like, Pokemon names and the cries and the moves they learn and all the different games and all that little stuff. We might even actually have, like, a future episode that involves, like, Pokemon trivia because I just know so much about it.
Yeah, test her trivia on Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah, I really love Pikmin, too, like I mentioned. I was big on I was big in the Earthbound fandom, but the funniest part is I've never actually played an Earthbound game, so maybe that's something I'll do in the future, especially now that it's easier than ever to get access to it, because that was kind of like that was sort of like the joke back then, when I was in this clique with Spider and PSI Paula 4 and my other friend,
yes.
Like, Earthbound was like this rare game, and everyone was making jokes about like Reggie, localized Mother 3. But now it's easier than ever to play Earthbound and like the original Mother game because I think it's on the Switch, the Switch Online service that gives you the free games. And you could also just download it online, like downloading games. I remember the first time I downloaded a ROM. I think it was for, like, Pokemon Ruby or something like that. It was like magic. I was like, what? I have this video game on my computer? I like Mario, Pokemon, Pikmin. I also really like Fire Emblem. WarioWare. That's what I've been playing recently. I got WarioWare Get It Together for Christmas. Because I meant to buy it when it came out back in 2021, but I was busy at the time and just didn't get around to it, but I finally got it for Christmas. I've been having a blast with it. WarioWare is just one of those games where, like, I don't really, like, touch it, but then, like, every, like, 5 years or so, like, a new WarioWare game comes out because they give you, like, one for every console. They're like Mario Kart, pretty much, where you get, like, one every new console. I'm like, oh my god, I love WarioWare! I also really love games that have a lot of customization. I'm a big fan of the Mii games, like, Wii Sports, Wii Party, Tomodachi Life, Miitopia. I fucking love Miitopia. I recently got into Minecraft. I know, like, 10 years after it came out, I'm finally playing Minecraft, and I got really into that. So, I really love, like, the, like, little casual, fun, colorful games, Some people call them baby games, but I don't care. I have fun with them. I'm just here for a good time.
I totally get that, and I feel that. Okay, for me, for SpiderStaryu, what games did I play growing up? So, one of the first games I actually played, that I don't really remember too much. Obviously now I remember, but I don't remember too much that I first played, like when I was like 3, was Super Mario Land for the Game Boy. Or Game Boy Color. I played on the Game Boy Color. And then the first games that I really vividly remember playing were, and this is ironic, it's Mario Party. Mario Party was the first game I, like, really played. Like, I played it when I was, like, 4 years old. And I remember playing Mario Party, and oh my gosh, it was so much fun. I remember not even realizing who I was or what. I just remember just jumping and not even, like, really playing in the mini-games. Even when I lost, they would, like, send me, you win, until I eventually realized that I was losing, and then I would be a baby about it. But I played Mario Party and Mario Kart 64. Like, those were the first games that I played. And I've had so much good memories and so much fun, with those two series. I still play those two series to this day. Like, Mario Party and Mario Kart are such big parts of my life when it comes to gaming. So I love me some Mario Party. I love me some Mario Kart, Really
Yes.
still big into it. And, I'm even playing Mario Kart Tour nowadays. I play Mario Kart Tour, which is the mobile version of Mario Kart. It's on the mobile app stores on Android and Apple devices. You know, it's so much fun. I love Mario Kart Tour. I love it. It's like playing mission mode on Mario Kart DS. That's why I enjoy it so much. Like, I love it.
Oh, yeah, that was the shit. I think now that you mention it, I think Mario Kart DS is the game that got me really into Toads. Like really? Toads in general. Yeah, because I remember there was this kid in middle school named Timothy. I was friends with him.
Never listened to Timmy.
Not the different, a different Timmy. He was like a black kid.
Okay.
And I was friends with him, and I went to the Nintendo World Store again because I live in New York, so it's just like a train ride away. I remember going to the Nintendo store and I bought a copy of Pokemon Emerald because at that time they still had like GBA games for sale there. I got a copy of Pokemon Emerald, and I was a middle schooler. I wasn't very smart. So I could never beat it. I could never beat Wallace because my dumb ass transferred my Rayquaza over to Diamond because Diamond was like my main game that had all my good stuff on it. I was like, whoa, I got Rayquaza. I'm going to put that in my other game. So I don't think I really had a good team to fight Wallace with. I could never beat Wallace, and I think I just got tired of it, and I ended up trading my copy of Emerald to Timothy, and he gave me his copy of Mario Kart DS. And normally I think someone would say Pokemon Emerald for Mario Kart DS. That doesn't feel like a fair trade, but that game changed my life. It was my first Mario Kart, and it's what helped me like fall in love with Toad, and then eventually Toadette because I don't even remember how I found Toadette. I think I just saw her one day. I was like, "There's a girl one." And yeah, I already
you like girls.
And I already told you how much she changed my life. But yeah, the Mario Kart DS mission mode, that was the shit. I'm glad they're bringing stuff like that back.
Yeah, Mario Kart Tour is like completely that. Like, you do little missions to get stars, and then you earn carts and things like that. People say a lot of different things about Mario Kart Tour, which I think we're gonna do a whole episode about it in the future. But like, Mario Kart Tour to me is very fun. It's mission mode. Basically on the go. I love it. So yeah, I played Mario Party, played Mario Kart. Pokemon obviously is a big thing in my life, and it was crazy because back then, my family were. Look, I want to just say this to just say, this is not me hating on my family. This is just saying the reality of how I grew up. Okay, so please, like, don't take this as like being, complaining or anything like that. But back then, my family thought Pokemon was evil.
Oh my god, were they one of those, like, Pokemon is the devil type families?
Because they thought that Pokemon was made by the people who made Dungeons and Dragons, and, like, they had already a belief about Dungeons and Dragons.
Did they also think, like, Harry Potter was evil?
Yes.
Oh my god. Well, nowadays, it kind of is. Now you know what kind of shit the creators are, but I don't think I have to go into detail on that.
Her. Can't stand her, yeah. But, no. I want to just say this. So they thought those things, but then they eventually were educated. Because, number one, Pokemon is not made by the people who made Dungeons and Dragons. That's number one. The only thing that they shared was they shared a company, card company, Wizards of the Coast. That's the only thing they shared. Which, they just made the card games. And also, number two, Dungeons & Dragons itself is not evil. Just because people did crazy things back then, like, it's not.
I think it's so fun. I mean, I didn't really, like, grow up in that... I didn't really grow up in that era. I didn't really have any big, like, D&D people in my family, but I thought it was so funny how evil and diabolical people thought Dungeons & Dragons are when, like, the first thing that comes into my mind with Dungeons and Dragons is just like a bunch of like sweaty nerds just like roll for initiation.
Yes, exactly.
It's such nerd shit. I have a lot of friends who are into it now, and they're all nerds.
But that's the problem. People thought that Dungeons and Dragons was evil because of something apparently happened back then where someone did something, and then that was actually from like the 80s or 90s that people believed that, and so it carried on, and people just believe it because. Just like with the misinformation about gay people. They believe misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they just believe it. And it's like, now my parents don't think anything like that about Pokemon or Dungeons & Dragons. Because they're educated on it. But before, they really believed it. And so it was hard for me liking Pokemon growing up, but I always watched the anime. I always loved the games. And eventually they came around. Like around Gen 3, Gen 4, they were like, okay, whatever. You like Pokemon. And look, nowadays they play Pokemon Go with me. Like sometimes they'll be on their phones and be like, hey,
yes,
Mom,
right.
Hey, Dad, check a Pokemon for me. They're like, okay, I'll check Pokemon. And my mom pronounces the names wrong. It's funny, but it's fun. Like, it's totally different now. So, they play Pokemon Go sometimes and things like that. And I love Pokemon Go. We'll talk about Pokemon Go more in a second. But, I play Mario games. I play Pokemon games. I play Kirby. Kirby means a lot to me because of the connection I have to Kirby. I was introduced to Kirby by my cousin. Rest in peace. I love you, cousin. He's not here anymore. But he introduced me to the Kirby games, and that's why I love Kirby. I love Kirby and Smash Brothers. I love the Kirby games. I love Kirby so much. I have so many Kirby plushes in my room because of that connection to Kirby. I love Kirby so much. And I would love to do an episode on Kirby. Maybe one day we'll get you to play a game and we'll talk about Kirby. Because Kirby's fun.
I played a couple of Kirby games. I grew up with the DS games.
Yeah, Kirby's a fun series. So that's my main. It's Mario games. It's Pokemon. Of course, Smash Brothers and things like that. Metroid, Kirby, things like that. That's the games I grew up with, and that's what I'm playing now. So right now, I'm mostly playing Pokemon Go, which we can kind of talk about Pokemon Go now. Pokemon Go, Mario Kart Tour. But let's talk about Pokemon Go. I want us to talk about Pokemon Go before we end the podcast, because Pokemon Go was such a big part of our lives. We always play Pokemon Go. So, Dreadianz, I kind of want you to talk about, how you were introduced to Pokemon Go, were you playing it back then, and talk about how you regained interest.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, so obviously I knew I was going to play Pokemon Go as soon as it was announced, because I'm a big Pokemon nut. I was already explaining.
Of course.
I first started playing it maybe a few weeks after release, because I remember I was getting, I got a new phone around then. I was waiting to get a new phone, because I was worried that my current phone wouldn't be able to run it. And I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it at first, because it came out around the time, it was 2016 it came out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2016 in summer.
Yeah, it was July 2016. Yeah, it was especially fun going to my college campus and catching stuff on my way to school. There are other people playing, so it's always fun seeing the big crowds of people going for the same Pokemon. It's oh my god, there's a wild Dragonite, or there's a wild Charizard, or whatever people like going for. I kind of dropped it after for a half a year though, because at the time it released, it was just the Kanto Pokemon, and then they added the Johto Pokemon. But honestly, I already mentioned that Diamond was my first game, so I'm not really a huge fan of the first 3 gens. So I was I'm not interested in Kanto or Johto, so I kind of stopped playing for a half a year. But then around 2017. My anxiety got pretty bad around 2016, 2017 because of current world events, and also I just I was just in a big, huge depressive rut. I was having eating issues. I would always be crying and having panic attacks. So I decided to start playing Pokemon Go again, because I figured it'd be healthy for me to go out for a walk and get my mind off of things, distract myself by catching the Pokemon. And this is around the time when Hoenn was already out and they were gonna add Sinnoh soon. So it was a perfect time for me to hop back in. They had already had the community days and raids features in the game, so I had a lot of fun joining raids around my neighborhood and at school, and doing community day in my neighborhood. And I remember when I was really into it again, I visited Spider. I went to Spider's house.
Yes.
And I was showing him I'm into this, and I sort of I don't remember if you hadn't played the game or you had also stopped the game, but I was you should play this. We could play it together.
Yes. So for me, I started Pokemon Go back when it first came out. I only played it for a week or two, I didn't play it for too long because it drained the battery, number one, of my phone. It just zapped that thing.
Yeah.
It destroyed not destroyed my battery, but like it just died so fast when I would play it outside. And I kind of needed my phone outside, so it's like, oh, I can't really play it. But also because I was like kind of nervous of someone taking my phone. I was very nervous about that type of stuff because growing up, man, whether it be like, so when I was a kid going to things like going to church or just, going to a friend's house or a family member's house, I would always bring my little Game Boy Color or my Game Boy Advance on the train. So like I would always play it on the train. My mom and dad would be like, "Be careful, someone might take it." So I always had that, and because if you grow up in New York City, you know what it is. Like you always got to be careful of your stuff. That's what the subway people always tell you: be careful of your stuff, be careful of your surroundings, because like you gotta watch your stuff. So that's how I grew up. So I was always just cautious about my stuff. So I was cautious, like, oh no, someone's gonna take my phone. But when Dreadianz came over to my house and told me about Pokemon Go, I'm like. She's like, you should play it. We can play it together. I'm like, I don't know. Let me play it. And then when I was playing it, I was just leveling up like crazy because I was at such a basic level. And I was like, oh, this is fun, leveling up and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was like
level 4.
He was a way far behind me. And now he's like level 50 and I'm still like level 42. I think I was like level 38 or whatever when I introduced him to it because I'm a lot more casual about it. He got into it like hardcore, and that's the best part because at the time I reintroduced him to it, I was already almost graduating college, so and I didn't really have a lot of friends at my college because it was a commuter college, so I would just take the subway over there, I'd do my classes, and I didn't really have any desire to stay around after school was over because I'm not really a big party guy, and I was just like, man, I want to go home. So yeah, I didn't really make any friends in college. A lot of my friends, including Spider, were online, so it's like, if I want to hang out with people, I'll just talk to them. But yeah, it was fun to finally have someone to play the game with. And let me tell you, the first time we met up in the city to do a community day together, that shit was life-changing. We would catch so much Pokemon because before I would only play it in my neighborhood and the spawns were not as good. So I'd get maybe like 3 shinies, like 2 or 3 shinies. Like the first community day I remember playing was the Squirtle one that had like the special like sunglasses Squirtle. And it was the Eevee one, too. But I think the first one we played together was, like, Beldum, maybe? Beldum or Cyndaquil?
Yeah, it was Beldum. That was our first one in October.
In October, yeah. So I went from, like, catching, like, 2 or 3 shinies to be catching, like, 11 or 15. I think recently, this month's Chespin Community Day, I caught 26 shinies.
Yeah.
So it became like a sort of like routine for us to meet up every month or so whenever there's these events. And we'd hang out in the city, we'd go for a walk, we'd have some lunch together. It's just great for great for the body, great for the soul. And when they do those big events too, like the Go Fest and all, we meet up for those too. And it's really so much better to play these sorts of games when you have a community or a close friend to do it with you. And so, you can definitely expect us to talk more about Pokemon Go and Pokemon in general because it's pretty much the reason this podcast exists. Spider came up with the idea for the podcast while we were playing Pokemon Go. Yeah. So it would be stupid to say that, it didn't have a big hand in helping us like reconnect more and share our experiences. In addition to our fated meeting on YouTube and then later on Mario Party Legacy.
Yeah, see, everything here is fated. Everything is fated. This is all destiny for all of this to come together to be what it is today, which is the Gamer Agenda Podcast, okay? Before we finish off, I do want to say one more thing about Pokemon Go. The first one I did, the community day, was, like we mentioned, Beldum, right? Because, oh man, let me tell you something. The one thing I remember back then about Beldum and, Metagross, Metagross was so freaking cool. Like, y'all don't understand. Y'all got so much Pokemon now, y'all just don't get it. I remember when I first saw Metagross, I was like, whoa, that's so cool. Oh man, every kid, every adult, everyone thought Metagross was the coolest thing ever. So it's almost fate. Like, that was the first community day I did. And, like, I didn't know what to expect, but, like, I think I got, like, 7 or 8 shinies. I think, Dreadianz, you got, like, 3, I believe?
Yeah.
4?
Not
Something
my best luck, but you got so many.
But then the next one was Cyndaquil, and then you got, like, 11, I got, like, 2.
Yeah, I remember losing one, too, because I don't know if this still happens today, but I know a few years ago, there was this sort of bug on the community days where, they usually be, like, from 2 to 5 p.m. There was this bug where, like, if you had a shiny that spawned at, like, 4:59, and you caught it, and it's like, it turns 5 o'clock when you caught it, it wouldn't be shiny anymore. It would just turn back to, like, a normal Pokemon. That happened to me with one of my Cyndaquils, I remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if it still happens now. I've definitely caught a lot of, like, last minute shinies, but I don't think that happens anymore. I think, like, the worst that happens now is that, like, you try to tap on something and it just disappears when it hits 5.
All right, so I think we're at the end of our podcast. Wow, I can't believe it. This is, like, our first podcast. This is episode 0, y'all. This is episode 0. Like, we're introducing you to us. Like, I really hope you guys have gotten to know us, understand a little bit more about us. Of course, we have an email. We have our social media that we're gonna plug in a second. But I just want to let y'all know, if you want to know more about us, send us some questions. If we don't have no problem, like, answering some questions, like, on our podcast. Like, okay, like, towards the end, like, let's answer some questions. Like, y'all have some questions for us, let's answer it. Or if it's like a simple question, we could just answer it on our social media or through email. So we want to just plug those things really quick before we do our own personal social media. So let me get the social media out. First and foremost, our email itself. If you want to email us, it's thegameragenda@gmail.com. Let me say it again. thegameragenda@gmail.com. So you can send us an email, send us a question, let us know what you think, or just, hey, also, you know what? If you are gay, you're queer, and you want a guest star, that's a good way to contact us and let us know a little bit about you. Let me know if you got, like, your own social media, your own, like, Twitch, YouTube, or things like that. We could maybe have you on, like, because we want to cover a very diverse array of topics. We want to talk about all sorts of different queer topics, whether it be history, whether it be about different identities. Like, I know me and Dreadianz have a podcast planned about bisexuality. We're going to have some bisexual people on, and they're going to explain their experiences and how they feel in the LGBTQ community, and then also being in, things like that. We're going to have some podcasts about trans issues. We're going to have some people who identify as trans on, maybe some podcasts about non-binary. And then, of course, different video games topics as well. So we have a whole bunch kind of lined out for you that we're going to do. Right, Dreadianz?
Oh, yeah.
We have it all together. So we'll let you know more about it when we know we're going to do it. So, okay, so our Gmail, that we told you our email. Our Instagram is the Gamer Agenda. Twitter, Gamer Agenda Pod. So, Gamer Agenda Pod. Pod spelled P-O-D. Gamer Agenda Pod. And then we have a Facebook page, The Gamer Agenda. So just search up The Gamer Agenda, and it should pop up on Facebook, and that's us. Like our Facebook page.
And we'll have all these links and such in our description too.
Yeah, we'll put that in the description so you guys can just have easy access to that stuff. All right, so now, Dreadianz, why don't you plug some of your stuff?
All right, so in addition to being a gamer, I'm also an artist. I mostly do cartoons and original character art, but there's the occasional video game fan art here and there. Hopefully this will still be the case by the time this is uploaded, but I am also opening commissions soon, so if you'd like some art of, your characters or, like, a specific, thing you enjoy, I'd be happy to do that for you. I serve people of all kinds. I have no censor. I am very, very anti-censorship. Or you could just follow me for my dumb ramblings. I am at Dreadianz on Twitter, Dreadianz on Instagram. If you want to toss some money my way on Ko-fi, My coffee is coffee.com/Dreadianz. Remember that it's KO-FI, and that's Dreadianz spelled DREADIANZ, because I'm a cool girl and I use a Z instead of an S.
You better keep it real. And then for me, you can follow my butt everywhere, right? I'm SpiderStaryu.
It's a big butt.
It sure is. Right, 10 out of 10. It's SpiderStaryu on YouTube, SpiderStaryu on Twitter, SpiderStaryu on Instagram. You can follow me on those 3 places. I mostly am on Twitter and on YouTube, so you can follow me in those places. That's the best place to find me. And then also, if you want, you can slide me a couple dollars. If you want to slide me a couple dollars, you can actually give me some money through PayPal. Right, my PayPal is paypal.me/Michael William Chavez. That's me, right? PayPal.me/Michael William Chavez. And you just throw me $1, right? Like I'm a drag queen. Just throw $1, right? Throw $1 my way. Dollar bills, y'all. Right? So I would really appreciate it, if you want to. So donate to me or donate to Dreadianz, right? We would really appreciate it, right?
Oh yeah. I am I would never say no to money, because
no.
No. It's tough times these days.
Yes.
We could always use a couple buck or two.
Couple bucks or two. You know what? Throw us both $1, right? A couple dollars. That'd be really sweet. We would really appreciate it. And also, to finish off, we're thinking of making a Patreon or an OnlyFans in the future. We're kind of seeing we're going to try to look at our options. And by the way, not an OnlyFans like a nasty OnlyFans. Just
if you subscribe, I'll show you my ass.
Just an OnlyFans that will maybe you know what we'll do? We'll give you like bloopers and things like that. Maybe we'll do like little funny couple minute segments where you'll get exclusive stuff. We're also thinking of maybe doing get an exclusive episode next week. So for example, you'll get the next episode ahead of time, so you'll be able to listen to it sooner.
Yeah,
things like that. We'll give you like a little benefit for giving us some money, because we're in hard times. Any little bit of cash you could throw our way, we would really appreciate so much. And that's the end of our podcast.
Thank you all for listening. Like we said, this is a big passion project of ours. We'd really like to go far with it and have some fun. So we are hoping that any criticism you have, any ideas, throw them at us. We'd love to hear your opinions and get our voices out there. And hey, if you want to get your voice heard too, shoot us an email, talk to our Facebook, talk to our Twitter, talk to us. We'd be happy to hear your thoughts and to share them going forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the end of our podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening. And this is not the end, all right? We got more planned for y'all. So thank you so much for listening. And hey, take care.
Stay sleazy.
Stay gay and stay playing games. Bye, y'all.
Bye.